Absolutely. Now, obviously, conventions are a little bit on a hold right now, and I feel like that might kind of be a good segue. This is a question I'd kind of like to ask as many interviewees as possible. Um, During everything that's been going on in 2020, have you felt that's made you more creatively inspired or creatively drained? And this is mainly for my own inquiry, just because every creator I talk to says something different. There seems to be people on all ends of the spectrum. So I'm curious how 2020 has affected you creatively.
Creatively, honestly, I'm fine. Because I think it's because I'm naturally like an extreme introvert, especially when it comes to like my creative side. So just like being on my own for a long period of time doesn't really bother me to that extent in terms of creating stuff. Uh, but in terms of like, obviously on a social standpoint, I'm really bored.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I know like when all this thing started happening, some of the people I talked to just completely stopped creatively for like several months just because
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe, some people probably work better with like a more positive mindset. I kind of
Hmm.
find that when things seem a little bit more down in the dumps, that usually makes me create a little bit more and I get a little bit more into the creation side. And then things start
Yeah.
going good. That's when I start like being a little bit less consistent and whatnot.
Hmm.
I've since gotten a pretty good handle at just maintaining consistency in general, but
Yeah.
I just do find it interesting how like everybody reacts a little bit differently. Do you feel that you've been like consuming more art than usual because of 2020 though? Like, do you find yourself more connected to what other people are creating these days, out of like necessity, or has you been ultimately spending less time consuming art or whatnot and focusing on other areas to spend your time on?
Yeah, that's the strange thing about these times because I've been finding myself less and less consuming all these different types of content and art.
Right,
Where like on paper that seems like the right like the natural thing to do because I
right.
have all this time. But I'm finding more and more that I'm just spending all this time creating music and working on music,
Very
just like
interesting.
totally honing in and using tunnel vision on the music that itself,
Right.
which is something that I've never really felt. So I'm just kind of like riding this creative momentum right now.
And this is the most momentum you felt in your career, or like
Oh
it,
yeah, because I have nothing else to do.
yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting how that works because
Yeah.
I definitely know people who also have just suddenly have become experts in so many art fields just through watching other people's things and critiquing them and stuff like that. And now their brain works completely differently just because they've consumed so much. And then there's
Hmm.
other people who just like you just go straight to the creative block and just keep on hammering things out
Yeah.
because they feel like what else am I going to do, right? And there's also I've noticed some creators who have taken this as an opportunity to explore other parts of their lives, try to
Hmm.
um, figure out more about their personalities or something, or work more on health and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
it's just interesting seeing how different creators react. And that's why I'd like to bring it up in future podcasts as well, because I think because everybody kind of treats it differently, it's important so that they hear other people's perspectives, so they can also understand that other people might be feeling the same way as them. They're very
Yeah.
strange times. But
Hmm.
anyway,
Yeah.
I
And
just wanted,
speaking of which,
yeah,
yeah,
go for it.
like the one thing that I realized with this pandemic, and it's been kind of hammering at me for a while, the most valuable thing that anyone can have as a creator is time. And
Definitely.
that can be really hard to find sometimes depending on like whatever life circumstances that you have or like the work that you have. But when all this time is presented to you on a plate on a silver platter, you got to figure out where you want to use
Right.
that
You
because
can't
like
just ignore it. There's no more excuse. You have to do something with
exactly.
that time.
And it's kind of like food too. It's like it's going to expire eventually, so it's like
Yeah.
you have to portion
It's like
wisely.
food. I like that. I
Yeah.
love analogies like that. I say them all the time. I get weird looks for it,
Everything
but
always ties back into food for me. I love food.
food is the core of everything ultimately. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally agree though. Like you feel some sense of responsibility to
Yeah.
further your creative endeavors when you have something like this. If you're not working or you're not going to school or something like that, um, you know, coming up, I'm gonna start doing both. So I'm trying to like get as much done as I can coming up. And even like you said, like the reason we scheduled this time is because you feel like you're gonna get a little bit more busy as the months go on and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um, but it's important, fellas. Make sure you stay healthy, use your time wisely, obviously, and then wear a mask. That'd probably be good. But we're gonna move on from the doom and gloom. Hey there. You just watched a clip from my creative podcast. If you'd like to check out the full episode, you can support me over on Patreon, and if not, you can subscribe to check out more clips coming here soon.